Today, our teaching is taken from the concepts taken from Volume 2, Chapter 7 of the Book of Life, the book Life and Teachings of the Masters of the Far East by Baird Spalding. It's also taken from Volume 25, Number 30, Dictation by Lanello. And then we want to end this discussion from another dictation by Lanello, Volume 24, Number 60 of the Pearls of Wisdom also. These teachings are so vital in the time which we are living, when anti-God forces are raging and are trying to influence each one of us to a satanic philosophy and a satanic way of life. As the psalmist once asked, "What is man that thou art mindful of him, and the Son of Man that thou visit him? You have crowned him with glory and honor. You have made him to have dominion over the works of your hands. You have put all things under his feet. O Lord, our Lord, how excellent is your name in all the earth." And so the masters of the earth seem to have the same awareness as that psalmist. Let us first look at some of those concepts coming out of the masters, first from the Far East. From Life and Teachings of the Masters of the Far East, Volume 2, Chapter 7, he says, "Just as man may touch the earth with his feet, so on the wings of aspiration may he soar to celestial heights like those of old. He may walk the earth and talk with God, and the more he does so, the more difficult it will be for him to discover where universal life stops and where individual existence begins." And this is I've often thought about. For spiritual guidance, once you start hearing that still small voice, and you really get yourself involved in it, you forget where you stop and where that voice begins. It becomes harder and harder to be in those two different places, but rather you want to actually move into that total oneness where everything is. There's no separation. He says, when man forms an alliance with God through spiritual understanding, the boundary line between God and man disappears. When this point is reached, man will know what Jesus meant when he said, "I and my Father are one." And in the practicing of our faith, this is where we want to come out, where we can truly say and live the concept of I and my Father are one. My thoughts are his thoughts. My feelings are his feelings. Now, back to our quote. The great philosophers through the ages have accepted the idea of man as a trinity, but it never was their belief that he has a triple personality. They have considered him a being who in his nature is triune. If the triune nature of God is spiritual rather than physical, then the Trinity in man must be seen from a mental rather than a material point of view. One of the wise philosophers has said, despising everything else, a wise man should strive after the knowledge of self, a capital S. For there is no knowledge that is higher or that brings more satisfaction of power than the knowledge of one's own being. If a man knows his real self, a capital S, he cannot do otherwise than discover his latent possibilities, his concealed powers, his dormant faculties. Of what avail if a man should gain the whole world and lose his own soul? His soul is his spiritual self. And if he truly discovers his spiritual self, he can build a whole world if he is serving his fellow men by doing so. He who would attain the ultimate goal must search the depths of his real self, capital S. And there he will find God, the fullness of all good. It is because man is a trinity in unity, composed of spirit, soul, and body, that in a state of spiritual ignorance, he has a tendency to think on a level with the lowest degree of his nature, which is the physical. The ignorant man looks to his body for the pleasures he gets. And there comes a time when he gets from the senses all the pain that he can stand. What he does not learn through wisdom, he must learn through woe. And after repeated experiences, he will not deny that wisdom is the better way. Jesus, Osiris, and Buddha said that with all our understanding, we must get wisdom. Well, one should ask, what is wisdom? How do I know how to use wisdom? If you look it up, you will find that is the it is the ability to contemplate and act coming out of one's experience, his knowledge, his experience, his understanding, his common sense, his insight. A wise man works from the wisdom he has earned in his life. Thought, operating on the plane of intellectual, raises the vibrations of the body to a point which corresponds to liquid. On this plane, thought is neither wholly material nor wholly spiritual. It is vibrating like a pendulum between materiality and spirituality. But there comes a time when one must choose which one he shall see, that he occupies a position between the great extremes of mental activity, the lower of which is the body, the higher is the spirit. You have to decide, are you going to move on the high or are you going to move on the low? This is every one of us have to make our decision in life. He said, mind is the connecting link between the visible and the invisible. Operating on the plane of the senses, the mind becomes the seat of all animal appetites and passions. It is the serpent in man's Garden of Eden, which beguiles him into partaking of the poisonous fruit. When Jesus said, as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, even so must the Son of Man be lifted up. He was not referring to the raising of his body on the cross, but to the elevation of the soul or mind above sense delusions. Standing between spirit and body, though separated from neither, the soul or mind is capable of thinking even lower than the brute thinks, or it may enter into the conscious union with pure spirit, where there is an abundance of peace, purity, and God power. When the Son of Man is lifted up to that realm in which he rises above the fallacies of the physical realm, he thinks and acts on the plane of pure intelligence. There he discriminates between those instincts which he shares with every other animal and those divine intuitions which he has in common with God. It has been shown that when man thinks on the plane of pure spirit, the soul enters consciously that realm wherein it perceives the ideal of things rather than things themselves. It is no longer dependent upon the senses, but with clear vision, it sees beyond horizon's grander view. It is here that truth is revealed by true intelligence and speaks the inspiring and health-giving message. I have found that as I begin to work with Lanello at his highest, that I can see past the problems of life very quickly. It's amazing. You get into a situation where you're really bound up and you say, Lanello, can you help me see through this? And immediately there is a breakthrough. You move up above it. He said, when the Son of Man has been lifted from the depths of his material world and has been surrounded by pictures of tranquil beauty and refinement of the mental world, after a time he is seized with a healthy dissatisfaction, and the ever upward urge of the soul bears him to higher realms. There he no longer sees the pictures of tranquility, but dwells in the land of tranquility, surrounded by perpetual beauty. This, my friends, is possible for you and I. He has glimpsed the inner, and to him that has become the all. And the outer has become the inner. He lives in a world of causes, where before he moved in the world of effects. The spirit of triune man is pure intelligence, that region of his being where neither sense testimony or human opinion has any weight against the ascertained truth. It is Christ within, or the Son of God in the Son of Man, the discovery which sets at rest doubt and its discouragements. It is from this pinnacle of his being that man views all things with the clear vision of an educated soul. He beholds more things in heaven and upon earth than are dreamed of in any philosophy. When he has learned that he is not a body with a mind, which is ruled either from within or without, but that both can be obedient servants to his real spiritual self. He has brought into the expression that God-given dominion with which he was originally endowed. Spirit is the supreme essence of man's being. It is never diseased and never unhappy. Whereas the great soul Emerson said, it is the finite that suffers. When you and I are sick, it's the finite self that's sick, mentally and physically. The infinite lies stretched in smiling repose. Job of your Bible told you that man was spirit, and the breath of the Almighty gave him life. It is indeed the spirit in man which gives life. And that spirit rules his lower activities. Spirit issues commands with authority, and all things become subordinate to righteous rule. It's rather interesting when you are corrected by spirit. I remember giving a beginning dictation or a beginning instruction for a group in Sweden. The Swedish people are a very interesting people. You stand before them and you get absolutely no sense of where they are. They sit there very stoic and they are listening to you. And I remember this one lecture I gave. At the end of the lecture, there was a question. And when I answered the question, I misquoted or misstated it. And as soon as I closed and people got up to leave, I heard Lonello say so clear, Carl, you know better than that. This is the answer. And I had to say to everybody, stop, stop, stop. Everybody sit down. I made a mistake. When you have this kind of thing happening, it's really great correction. And it encourages one to become even more listening. As you remember, it has been said of old, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. So let us turn now to this Master Lonello, for he says the same thing that I have just read. The only thing is, he says it differently and more to our way of thinking, perhaps, but is very important. He starts out his dictation with a very interesting thing that we need to copy. He says, O gentle radiance of the white light, thou dove of the Spirit, be formed anew and descend now in answer to my call upon these, my very own beloved. You know, if we would copy so many of the things that the masters do, instead of seeing them, oh man, that was a beautiful prayer he just said, we need to copy that. The moment you open your eyes in the morning, what would happen if you would start your day by saying, "Oh, Spirit of the living God, bless my home this day. Bless those people that I am working with this day." If we could start our day every day moving from that point of reference, copy him. Oh, white light. Oh, light of Almighty God. Whatever you want to say, but what you're doing, what you're doing is drawing down the light for the day. Mother once said, when you think of your altar in your house, you stand before your altar and you bless and you do your spiritual work. And then you go to bed, and the next day you get up. You don't think, but what's happened is the light that was on the altar yesterday has receded into the spirit again. Every 24 hours, it goes back. And we have to call it forth again every 24 hours. So as you learn to work with this whole understanding of light and its relationship with us and so on, if we can take this, just stop for a moment right now, close your eyes, see yourself awakening in the morning and see yourself making the call. Light of Almighty God, bless me this day. Bless my home. Bless every person I meet. Bless my business. Begin to see how a master works, beginning to actually become the master. Vanello continues, dearest hearts of my own desiring. That's nice. He really desires our oneness with him. When you know that, I had one opportunity to be with Vanello. I was in a meeting with him in Washington, D.C. I was leading a seminar. He was sitting right to my right, and we were talking about religion, and he was sharing his side of it in terms of modern religion. Mother sat right down off the stage. When you understand, they have just as much desire for us to be one with them as we would desire he be one with us. He said, I am always your father. Do you see Nanetto as your father? This is something that I've experienced many times when I actually felt myself saying, Father Lanello, I need your help. We begin to see and feel what he's saying. I am always your father, always Lanello with you. I am that Christ with you. Did you hear that? I am that Christ with you, guardian of your purity, presence of honor in the face of your own dishonoring of me when you stray from the path and do those things, oh, so foolish. Foolish in the light of the law that you know and the cause for which we fight together. We are on his team. Can you feel that? Can you feel that oneness? This is the oneness that I was talking about earlier, the oneness with God. those things that are the foolishness of men cannot rise to the temple of God. It is well to consider then, Lamelo says, that when the people of this world attempt to define the rightness and the wrongness of a deed, they do so many times with a bold bravado of justifications, beginning and ending with my free will, I have a right, and all sorts of reasons why a little bit of sin is like the salt or the pepper of life. A little bit will only season the stew and make it more palatable. A little bit of sin will make the course of a rough karma or a bad deal dealt from one's own karmic trust a little bit more bearable. And if I can say, so it goes, that I will do my job better by a little bit of sin rather than not doing it at all, I will then compromise. Excuses, excuses, excuses. He says, dear hearts, the devils know their song, and they sing that song all the day and all the night in the ear of those who need to hear it to justify their position, which is a lack of strength, a lack of a driving will to be who you really are, to stand at the level of the very floor of your Christhood and your own Christ flame. You must be where the point of light descends in you and where the flame springs up, and no lower than this. It is your right, your true right, and your true calling. It cancels out every other right. There are things you do not do because of this supreme right, which says, if you would have this right and exercise it, if you would have it and hold it and have recourse to it in the time of trouble or danger, then do not depart from it and claim those other rights. For the right to take drugs or fill the body with tobacco and alcohol, the right to swear, the right to sin. These are not corollaries. They're not the same as the right to be Christ, your right to be with God. On the contrary, this is the anti-rights movement. It has been abroad in the land for millions of years. The Nephilim thought, by their right to be, they could create mechanization man, also with us a million years, and all sorts of things. Because I'm a co-creator with God, therefore, they say, I have the right to create anything. God himself bears the burden of his law, the law of his own godhood. There are things which God himself does not create, not because he is God, but because he obeys his law. The law of the office of godhood is applicable in the whole stream of hierarchy. And therefore, those things not in keeping with the central theme of identity are called foolishness. For foolishness is the folly of the fool, and the fool is the one who has renounced his godhood for some other throne of a demagogue or demigod. Half gods are the demagogues of the world. Dear hearts, do not fool yourself, for this too is foolishness. I come to drink the cup, for I too call upon the law of forgiveness. Can you understand that we also exercise this ritual? Forgiveness is the law of the Aquarian age. Forgiving the lesser state of consciousness within yourself is an ongoing process whereby you, therefore, may put on the higher consciousness. There is always a higher consciousness above you, and therefore you grow into greater and greater states of grace, whereby you look upon the former self and you desire to forgive it, which means transmute it, for it no longer has usefulness. It is too gross in the sense of being too dense. It is a sense that you no longer desire the light of in the form of the threefold flame to descend so far into the planes of density where there's anger, depression, poor self-image, criticism, condemnation, all of this stuff. We need to get above it, to move away from it, so because it's so gross and dense. Higher and higher and higher is the manifestation of the threefold flame. It takes you with it, and when you rise with it, look where you were before in your former state, and you realize that in that former state, you compelled your threefold flame to descend to that point. You compelled God to be where you were. And now you look upon it and you say, I forgive it. And by your forgiveness, your former state of relative density, it is dissolved, and you move higher and higher with the rising threefold flame. And so in the 6th chapter of the book of Matthew, we have the Lord's Prayer. And in that Lord's Prayer, we said, give us our debts as we forgive our debtors. As you forgive, you are forgiven. As you forgive, it goes away. We have to begin to apply what we know at this point. By your forgiveness of that former state of relative density, it is dissolved, and you move higher and higher with the rising threefold flame. It is a threefold flame which ascends within you, and you ascend with it. And it takes you where it goes, if you would allow it. But you may also drag it down into the mire of an unprofitable human existence, unprofitable in every way. But by and by, you see, the threefold flame itself will manifest its own will. For it is, after all, the presence of God within you. Therefore, it will sever itself from the body that has become the willful body of sin, and it will return to the plane of the universal Christ consciousness. There are such individuals abroad upon the face of the earth. They have lost their threefold flames. And the greater shame is that in the hour when they lost it, they knew it not. And in that hour, they became what is known as a castaway. A castaway is one that has been literally cast away by the person of the threefold flame, who has said, I will no longer abide in this level of density. So you see, it appears as though you command the coming and the going of God, and that the threefold flame is following you around and must be wherever you are. This is true for a season, and God allows it so that you can feel a certain sense of being in the driver's seat, of being in control of your life. This is the cycle of opportunity. And the threefold flame moves with you wherever you are, even in the state of committing sin. You feel the presence of God with you. You know the comfort even of chastisement. You still have a sense of right and wrong, for conscience has not left you. That conscientious presence of the threefold flame. But there is an hour and a day when you elect to go down, and the threefold flame says, I will not descend another day or hour. I take my leave. I ascend to God. Now, there is a law of human evolution on this planet, and it is the law of mortality. Thus, that human continues. It may procreate with other humans, and its force field may reincarnate. This is the age of castaways, of their harvest. They are known as the dying race that will be no more. For when the cycles turn, they do not have the wherewithal to fit into the new vibration of the new age. And even their physical manifestation is cut off and no longer allowed to continue. Thus, in the face of this cyclic occurrence, which you now observe in the world, you see how death becomes so rampant on a planet. Thus, beware. For just when you think you are omnipotent one and you can control God, you may turn and find that you have no control whatsoever, and the cycles turn, and it is too late. Now you may argue and say, it is never too late, for he said, his mercy endureth forever. If it is never too late, then answer me this. Why the last judgment? And why the second death? And why the evaluation of the soul according to works? You cannot scramble from the courtroom of the sacred fire and say, I will quickly go and perform some good works for good record. It is spoken then. It is too late. Opportunity has cycled. The universe is moving on. The universe has elected to move on, and you have elected to remain where you are. And then he gives this fundamental understanding. He said, now learn of me and my path. Precisely the understanding of the humility of the infinite one. Be humble. Fear God in the sense of the respect of his law. Do good to one another. Feed one another as thou wouldst feed the Christ. Care for each other. Minister to each other's needs and to the sick. Be conscious of the sick. Be aware of their needs. Call them, minister to them, work with them. and bring the affected souls to the heart of God. Prayer, through prayer, concern, awareness, and so on. Be good Christians. Be good Chelas. Be good Buddhists. Be good Hindus. But whatever you do, be God where you are. For you have a capacity for Godhood in this very moment. Each of you carries a portion of the person of God. I desire you to be that God and protect that God. Even a thimble's worth of God can save a universe. Be God in your capacity to be God, and God will beget God within you. God will multiply himself within you. Do not give away the portion of the Godhood that is your own in this hour by foolishness. Indeed, all sin is foolishness. When the mighty rolling tide, the inundating waterfall of light is falling all around you and next to you, why? Oh, why would you choose to stand apart from it and watch it? Why would you not stand under it and be cleansed and be inundated and rejoice and rise? Why? Oh, why? This is the cry of an ascended master. Why? Oh, let me not hear the answer, but let me see you leap into the descending sacred fire and go to the victory. I am your dearest Lanello. And as I meditated on this, I happened to think that Paul said something once. He said, I run the race then with determination. I am no shadow boxer. I really fight. I am my body's sternest master, for fear that when I have preached to others, I should myself be disqualified, or shall we use the term, be cast away.